Welcome back to Catholic Reboot. This episode is Be Fruitful and Multiply. And I thought it was appropriate to interview my father, who had just turned 95 at the day of the interview, because he had 12 kids. I was number seven. And I'm also going to have another gentleman on whose name is Michael Yezevich, who also had 12 kids. Now, the importance of those two is my dad being 95 and Michael being in his mid 60s. So, to show that literally Michael could have been the age of one of my dad's children, so it shows you it's not an outdated concept to have many children as Catholics. After that, I actually want to interview Michael's son, who has started a family and has three children right now. And the reason for that is I think what happens in our current culture is anything old is being thrown out, and what's important for us to remember as Catholics is our traditional Catholic faith is so important. And to look back at my dad's generation, he was raising children starting in the very early 50s and stopped having children in the mid 70s. It's a long period of time. Um, so to say that, well, that's just the way they did it in those old days, or what you would hear is, well, you must be Catholic. Uh, Quite honestly, when I was growing up, the norm was larger families. I mean, we just happened to have what I used to call double family, right? But it wasn't unheard of for families to be six and seven in the family, right? And I think as the younger Catholics are marrying and having kids, they have to remember the fruits of that, right? And why is that so important? Because why are we giving up on that? And I think it's because we have placed material things in place of that, right? So to have the bigger house, the nicer cars, to have the two income family, we threw out some of the greatest treasures, which are children. And who knows how many of these children will change the world or become the next saint. And I think, and you'll hear it in my dad's interview, his idea was he handed a lot over to Christ. So was it always easy? Absolutely not. Was it difficult? He will tell you how difficult it was. But now at 95, he looks back and sees not only all his children, but all his grandchildren and great grandchildren, right? So my father is so fortunate that he actually has 13 great grandchildren, right? And what better legacy could he have, right? And you'd almost imagine when he meets his maker, he will be greeted with, "Welcome, you good and faithful servant." What I've seen with both my father and Michael Yezrovich Sr. is they made great sacrifices, but they're always positive and joyful Catholics, and they never gave up on the faith, no matter how difficult the trials were. The bigger question is, will the kids keep the faith, right? Because their greatest sorrow will always be they gave the deposits of the faith. Now that next generation needs to carry on. So I'll cut it at that, and we'll begin to go through the interview with my father on his birthday. Okay, so this series is on Be Fruitful and Multiply. So, what I'm going to do is actually interview Joseph Viola first, then Michael Yezevitz Sr. second, and then his son, Michael Yezevitz Jr., to just show the difference as to the Catholic faith's position on having many children. So, Dad, I'm going to just throw it over to you. So, when you were coming up in the 50s, what was the church's position on having children?
Um, I don't think when the church position was that you could not use contraceptives and that you could use the rhythm method, and that didn't work, as you can tell. But after investigating more, using the rhythm method is actually a form of birth control because you have a chance of getting pregnant, but your chances are not very good if the woman is going to take the temperature and go through all that trouble. But the church at that time go and multiply, and that's the way they taught it prior to Vatican II. Multiply. The purpose of marriage was for the procreation of children. Okay? In a nutshell, cut and dry.
Yeah. So, how difficult was it for you as a young practicing Catholic to have to deal with all the things that came with that? So, you couldn't, you'd have to put other things aside, right? So, you couldn't have the biggest house and the biggest car and
No, no,
what have you.
no. We did we struggled. You know that, well.
Yeah.
That 1969, when we moved back from Waterloo, I don't think my kids knew, but I was completely broke because my business in Southern Illinois went down the tubes. So we moved up there, and I had to borrow $300 or $350 from my brother. So I had bailed him out when he was in Boston, and then he bailed me out when I got to Chicago because he was broke in Boston. So then I got I was I got a job. I was selling insurance, and I was fortunate enough to sell about 3 or 4 policies, and I paid my brother off. I think in less than 3 weeks, the commission that on the life insurance that I had sold. But that was a big deal. Well, thank God for Sears. I don't know how we would have made it if we didn't have a credit card to clothe these kids. You
Yeah.
know, and I don't think you kids knew it.
Mhm.
Uh, well, Mom was so great doing this thing here. Uh, you can't believe what always baking bread and making pizza, making big meals, and uh, buying cereal and milk and all the things that were nutritional. But she had to, if we didn't have a Sears credit card, your kids would have had clothes on your back. So we got a Sears credit card. We clothed most of the kids that way. It was a very difficult time. But let me just tell you something that I experienced. Those were the best time of my marriage. When I was broke and when we had difficulties, it just seemed that there was no end in sight. But when you look back and we say they were the happiest days of our life, the kids just keep coming and kept coming, but our Lord provided. We never questioned. We just did what we were supposed to do. Uh, it's a lot different. So I hope that answers some of your questions. But
So,
that's what
Dad, you were married. Wow, maybe 12 years, maybe 15 years before Vatican II was in place. So by the time Vatican II came about, I would say you're probably up to 10, 10 of the 12 kids, right?
yeah.
What
Uh,
what did you see Vatican II did to the whole concept of be fruitful and multiply?
well, Vatican II. I started reading up on it, and the more I read up on it, the more I come to realize that it was not the same church that we grew up in, that I grew up in, or your mother grew up in. And the Latin was taken away, and everything was shortchanged. And for a while there, I kind of hopped on that train, the Novus Order train, until I started doing a little research and start reading a little bit more. And the more I read, the more I was convinced. And I'd read some good priests writing and some theologians. And the more I read, the more I started to realize what a joke it turned out to be, Vatican II. And to this day, it's still a joke, you know. But a lot of people can't see it because I'll tell you the reason is they like the comfy. They like to come to convenience of what's going on. And you can tell it by the religious. And you can tell it by today what this epidemic is going on. Like what you experienced, what you told me the other night, what you experienced. You didn't have a. I would have told that priest, get out of my face. I'm going into your church and don't stop me. I mean, I wouldn't take that crap from any of them.
Yeah.
And you know better than I because you've had your dealings too.
Yeah.
But
So if you had to advise the younger Catholics, right?
yeah,
And I'm talking about the men, right? Well, no, maybe both. Maybe the men and the women that are
yeah.
raising their kids. What would you recommend to them? Because you did say it'd be really difficult for you to be able to do what you did in today's church and culture. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, the culture's changed so much that these kids today, including you, have been robbed. You've all been robbed so much that it's a difficult time for a parent, for mom and I to look at and see what's going on. Some leave the faith, some join other faiths. This never happened prior. I mean, not in our family, as far as I know. And so it's a very difficult time. And it hurts a father and a mother to see these kids going out all the way. But you know, while I talked to a lot of priests, and Joe, you did your job, but I don't know whether I did, if that's a good enough answer. I'm still, when I see my children and I see they're not practicing the true faith, and I mean the traditional faith. I don't mean this hocus pocus Vatican II, because if these people would take the time to read and to investigate and see what's going on, and with the current Holy Father, what's going on. It's no longer the Catholic Church. So it's very difficult. And that's why these kids leave. These kids are not stupid. They can see it better than sometimes than the parents. You understand that?
yeah.
I hope that gives you some kind of an answer.
Well,
No,
if you go to St. John Cantius now, you're starting to see some of the younger Catholics, husband and wives, attending the mass, and then you're starting to see more kids, aren't you, Dad? You're starting to see where,
oh, yeah, well, even with Pius X, that chapter was jammed. And I get their newsletter, and you see their processions are jammed. Uh, it's getting more and more. Excuse me, but it's going to take a long haul. It's going to take a long haul, and if you don't pray for the faith, you're not going to get it.
yeah,
It's just too much time is involved in what's going on in the world. You understand what I'm trying to say? Is that with this politics and everything else that goes on, everybody's they're not looking at the number one. If you start looking at our Lord and giving things up every day, you got to pray. When you say a rosary a day is not going to do it. You got to say at least 3-4 rosaries a day. How can you stay out of sin without it? So it's Wall. It's just,
yeah.
it's one of those things.
So if you gave advice to your granddaughters and grandsons that are married, what's kind of the punch list that you would recommend to them?
Well, Wall, I've got about as much diplomacy as a bull. I tell them the way I feel, and I see that that the kids are getting married today. They have no concept. They want to They want to have their cake and eat it. They have to have a home. They have to have 2 cars. They're not willing to sacrifice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What their marriage is really all about. Their marriage is for procreation. And you're going to say, yeah, you're going to keep having kids. Our Lord will decide how you're going to have the kids. Our Lord will give you the kids, or He won't give you the kids, the children. And this is the way we practiced it. I mean, there was a lull there between Elizabeth and Neil. There was a big, it was about 6, 7 years.
Right.
That's the biggest lull we had, right?
Yeah.
And today, Walt, it the the woman is working. Once the women's left the house, the family's destroyed. Once the women left the house, got a job, it's destroyed. They did not want to stay home. Why didn't they want to stay home? Because they wanted the better things of life. They want a house, they want a car, they want to be able to socialize, they want to do everything that's contrary to what our faith is all about. That's what our faith is all about. And it's hard. Nobody said it's going to be easy. And when you talk to Mike's father, he'll tell you. And I never really made a lot of money, well, but we survived. You know what I mean?
So do you see, when you look at the men today, what's the biggest difference you see in men, fathers, husbands today and the time you were coming up?
The average man today is a wimp. It's whatever his wife wants him to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you and I both know what we're talking about. If you cannot let the women run your life, you have to have a man in the house. Our Lord made man to rule over women. It doesn't mean to be mean to them. Be just like St. Paul says, respect them, give them all the love that they need, but they cannot run the family because they're too emotional. Women are too emotional. Men are more or less straightforward. Some of them are not because they don't have the faculty, but others are. But this is what I'm going to tell the young men. Once the women start getting their calls in, forget about it. You are no longer king of the household. You are no longer the chief. You are just another member of the family. Can't do it. You can't do it. The biggest thing that I can recommend to anybody, any young man today, or any young woman, is to pray you find the right spouse. That's all I can think. You gotta pray and pray that you find the right spouse. Not that she's got a good figure, not that she's got a good job, not that she's the most beautiful thing in the world, but that isn't going to bring you the happiness. I think this is the biggest problem we have today, is the women, and you can see it in our society. They're running the show. You have people like the Pelosi's and the others, and these other women that are in the government. They're telling the men what to do, and the men don't have the fortitude to say, shut up or be quiet. You know what I mean? This is my opinion.
Right.
I'm telling you.
So you had said in the past, you said one of the problems you see with people getting married is they're not doing enough research into their spouse, right? They're just
Absolutely.
willy-nilly.
That's right. I made a promise when I was in service, World War II, that if I found the right woman, I would remain chaste. And I made that promise, and I made a bargain with the Blessed Mother. If I'm chaste, I expect to find a chaste woman, and he did. And he found a chaste woman, the greatest woman I could ever married. Never complained, Wall. We moved 4 or 5 different times for different jobs. Never complained. And I feel like an idiot, and I had to do the work, but she always kept her pace. Whatever you want to do, Joe, we'll do it. Whatever you want to do, and that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard. So
But,
I don't know if I'm giving you the right answers, well, to
but
all these.
wouldn't you say, Dad, that uh, the woman's faith is very important because she's around the children the most, right? So if the woman is lax, it's going to put more of a strain on,
Absolutely.
you know.
If the woman is lax, uh, it, there's no there's no cohesiveness. You see, the man goes out because he's got a job to do. He's got to get his work together. He's got to provide for the family and everything else. Her job, number one, is to take care of her husband and her children. That's only your only job. That's the only job. Today, they don't want to do that well. They don't want to sacrifice that. So my daughters too, they all got jobs. Why? Why? Will you tell me why? And they have one or two kids. Why? Because they want the better things in life. But it's not going to, we're all going to have to pay. We are all going to have to pay the piper. Sooner or later, we got to meet them. And when we meet them, boy, I tremble when I the thought that when I meet our Lord, because there's a lot of things that maybe I could have done that I should have done more along that line that I neglected to do because I fell in line with the modern world. So that's it. I mean, these girls, they just they don't know how to cook, they don't know how to sew, they don't know how to clean a house. These young girls, they think all they have to do is go to bed. That's 20 minutes, an hour. I'll give the bed for an hour, and then what? Like St. Francis of Paulo says, and then what? And then what?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it is my opinion.
That's good. No, that's good.
And I wouldn't, and it's very difficult today because of the environment. I can sit back and say this, but with the environment the way it is today, it's that if a guy wants to meet a girl, he doesn't pray first. He doesn't go to mass. He doesn't fulfill his obligation. Most of the men end up in a bar. Now, most of the women now, I don't remember girls my age going to a bar, even drinking beer. Today, most of the girls go into a bar, and that's where you meet a guy. They'll meet a guy. One night, they may hop in the bed in one night. Who knows?
Right.
I mean, you understand what I'm trying to tell you?
Yeah.
Boy, so
yeah.
There you go. I'm following this whole thing up for you all, but
No, that's great because what I want to see. So Mike's dad is around Jerry's age, right? So Mike's dad could be your son, right? But he pretty much followed the same line of reasoning. That's why I want to put your interview next to his, because I think together it's a great profession of the faith to the younger Catholics, right? On how they too can do the same thing if they just thin it out a little bit, right?
yeah.
So no, thanks, Dad. This was good, and
No, well, I'm telling you exactly the way I feel.
Right.
That. Oh, by the way, what's her name? Jeanette? Is that her name? Or what's her name?
Danette.
What's her name?
Danette.
Danette.
Yeah.
Tell her it's on its way. I ordered it today. They're shipping it out today, and I just want to let her know to have it blessed.
Okay.
A little statue. I think she'll enjoy it.
I'll let her know.
God bless her. She had the right answer.
Yeah, she did. Right.
I think she knows what's going on.
Right.
She's a good woman.
All right. Thanks, Pops.
I don't want to be a downer. I am.
No. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, and we'll see you at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock.
You got it.
Right?
Okay.
Thank you, Walter.
Sure. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, son.